Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome back the patient Lee Harris. How are you?
I'm very good and still very patient.
Well, the reason you're patient today is because I had a little mishap this morning, so I had to push it back a couple of hours, and I do apologize for that because I do believe it's fairly late over there right now.
It's okay. It's only 9 o'clock. It's not quite bedtime just yet.
Well, I mean, at your age, I thought 9 o'clock was late.
Just give me half an hour. I'll have my cocoa on the go.
And I have to mention that Crew Travel is brought to you weekly by Blue Marine Travel, who haven't lost a passenger since Lee Harris was born back in the 70s.
Well done.
Thank you. I know. So travel is starting to look good. And you know what? I'm knocking on wood again. But it's starting to open up, and just in time. I mean, the European season is starting to take off. Last year, this was a time where everything just pretty much shut down straight across the board. Now we are seeing that there is requests for charters. People are really starting to look to travel, and it's exciting times. And we're seeing that reflect in different countries throughout Europe. What's going on in Italy right now?
Yeah, so effective Sunday, passengers can take one of Delta Airlines COVID-tested flights between the US and Italy for non-essential leisure tourism purposes. This reopens the country for Americans for the first time in over a year. Along with the reopening for leisure tourism, Delta is growing its offerings to the country. So as from May 26th, Atlanta to Rome flights will become a daily service, and New York to Rome flights will go daily from July the 1st. 3 more non-stop routes will also be in operation this summer. Delta will resume its New York to Venice flight from July the 2nd. Atlanta to Venice and Boston to Rome will start on August the 5th. In further good news, though, it's not just American crew who can enter Italy for leisure purposes. As from today, May the 17th, travellers from the European Union, Schengen area, United Kingdom and Israel can all travel into the country quarantine-free for leisure travel.
Wow, that's great news. Great news for all involved. Well, it's great news for everybody straight across the board because people are really itching to travel at this stage. Spain, what's happening there?
Yeah, so Spain's no longer going to require a negative PCR test for UK travellers starting from May the 20th. The move would boost travel from the UK as the country officially lifts its ban on non-essential travel from May the 17th. Spain is currently not on the UK's green list, though, which means any returning travellers from Spain back to the UK will have to self-quarantine at home, obviously, unless it's work-related, and then you get the exemption. The UK's rate of COVID cases per 100,000 has been below 50 since the last day of March and currently stands at 21.3. Now, Spain's criteria for PCR test-free travel for British tourists is 50 per 100,000. This means, barring some outrageous substantial spike in cases, Britons will be able to travel to Spain worry-free.
Great news. And British Airways, BA, they've got something going on.
Yeah, so British Airways, they've become the first airline to trial a new ultra-rapid COVID-19 antigen test, which displays results within 25 seconds, so it could be a game changer. The carrier will initially invite flight and cabin crew members to take the Pelican ultra-rapid COVID-19 test and will compare results against their standard tests, which staff members are already taking. The tests have recently been approved for use in Europe and the UK and are currently going through the US FDA approval. Basically, how it works is the users take a sample of their saliva into a disposable sensor unit, shake and insert it into a reusable digital reader, which is connected to a Bluetooth-enabled device like a smartphone, and then you wait for the results that appear through a mobile app. BA have said that subject to successful evaluation, it hopes to be able to offer the test technology en routes as soon as possible.
That's amazing. The amount of questions you see on social media, we need to get a PCR or we need to get tested 72 hours prior. Where can we go to get it done? And, our flight is first thing on Monday morning. And that seems to be one of the biggest issues is the flight being first thing on Monday morning, 72 hours. How are you going to get the results if you get the test done on Friday? It doesn't quite work. And it's been quite a stressor. So the idea that in 25 seconds, we can send men to the moon, for heaven's sakes. Why haven't we figured out how to get a test this quick? But it only makes sense.
It does. It certainly will be a game changer. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's all going to work out fine, and this can be rolled out not just to British Airways but to other airlines as well. Because, like you say, that is probably one of the main questions that we get asked. If they've got a flight at 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, how are they going to do it? Because a lot of the PCR testing places don't get results back on a Saturday and Sunday. So, that makes the logistics for yachts a lot more difficult as well, because they only have a small window to get people on. Then you've got to take on board all the charters and everything else. So yeah, I mean, if we can get to a stage where literally you can turn up an airport, 25 seconds, they can tell you if you can travel or not, then that is good news for everybody.
Well, and this is saliva, so they don't have to stick that like massively long Q-tip up your nose to like your brain, right?
No, thankfully not. This one isn't quite so evasive.
That's I've seen those, and I've seen the sort of like diagrams on and I'm like, no, because like, I mean, it's like, I wouldn't know what are you doing? Get that out of my nose. Like, really?
It'd be quite interesting, because I reckon I could go up there and come out here for you, couldn't it?
I'm pretty sure I ain't got nothing in there. So, they'd be like looking for something and they just keep on going because there's nothing to stop it, right? But no, I mean, that's great news. 25 seconds. What is the cost on that? Do you know, or are they is that just part of the process of buying a plane ticket now?
They've not said at all at this moment in time. They're obviously keeping it quite secret. I'm going to guess if it's a 25-second PCR test, it's going to be quite expensive to begin with. But we'll just have to sit tight, wait and see. Fingers crossed, hopefully the tests that they run with their staff and crew all come back fine. And then we can get this into play, and fingers crossed the price won't be too prohibitive.
Brilliant. What's going on with Qantas?
Yeah, unfortunately, a slightly worse news for Australia. Qantas has pushed back its planned international flights to late December 2021. The Australian flag carrier and its subsidiary Jetstar intended to resume flights to most international destinations from the end of October. That was already a 4-month delay to their previously announced plans. The airline have said that the decision is a result of the federal government's revised timelines for the completion of Australia's vaccine rollout, basically meaning they're 4 months behind schedule, and the significant reopening of the country's international borders.
There's been a lot of that going around as far as the vaccination schedules. It seems like, they were so positive about how quickly they could vaccinate each country. And then all of a sudden, this country is throwing it back. Well, we're 4 months behind, another country 3 months behind. And I think part of that is to do with the fact that there's just not enough vaccines out there.
Yeah, I think so. It does seem that certain countries do seem to have underestimated, haven't they? The logistics of getting the public vaccinated. You see certain countries who the UK have made many mistakes when it comes to COVID, it seems. But the one thing they do seem to have got right is the vaccination program over there, and they're smashing out of the park. But then you see, Europe have struggled with it. Australia, they seem to be struggling with it a little bit. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they're going to turn it around. I don't know. I don't know if it's just the lack of getting the vaccination to them, or just literally the logistics of getting it in place once it's in the country.
Or perhaps it's everything, right from the production of the vaccine to the logistics of getting it to the country and. I mean, there's just so many things. But I mean, the fact is we are seeing it reflected in travel. The fact that more and more countries are seeing more and more people being vaccinated, which means that we are starting to sort of get free, as it were, or freer as we used to be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just look at this show. I mean, the last 3 weeks, pretty much most of it's been positive stuff. It's not doom and gloom at the moment. Again, touch wood, like we said at the start of the show, that this is going to continue, and we do start to see borders opening up more and more, which seems to be the case at the moment. And yeah, we'll just keep hopefully rolling on, and each week we get better and better news.
For sure. Well, it would be nice to see a happy Lee Harris every week.
My staff say that every day.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. And we've had crew questions this week. What's going on there?
Yeah, we did. So we received a question yesterday with regards to passengers being denied boarding flights departing the United Arab Emirates to the Philippines. Unfortunately, there's no name on the email, so I cannot reference whoever it is directly. However, it does appear that from May the 14th through until the 30th of May, the Philippines government have banned any passengers, and this includes Filipino nationals who are commencing their journey from the United Arab Emirates, whether that be Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or from Muscat. Now, anyone who has an itinerary which originates from those places will not be allowed to board. This is on advice of the Philippine government restricting travellers arriving into the country from the UAE. However, The important part is if you are starting your journey from another point. So for example, if you're coming from Paris or from Madrid in Spain, and you're only transiting the United Arab Emirates, i.e. staying airside and on one ticket, you will be allowed to carry on your journey into the Philippines. So the only people who are banned at the moment are the ones who are physically starting their journey in the UAE.
So you know what? That's kind of scary because the amount of Filipinos that work in the UAE, that is one thing throughout this whole process that kind of baffled me to a certain extent, was the amount of countries that left their own people out in the cold, as it were, for a year without being able to be repatriated back to their home country. That to me is kind of scary. Like, you know where you live, you know where your home is, you know where your family is, and to not be allowed back into the country where, possibly your home is, your children is, your spouse is. I don't think that's right.
No, it's tough, isn't it? You hear these stories. We talked about the Australians who were trying to travel home from India to Australia, and the Australian government had gone the whole hog of saying that they'd put people in jail or fine them some ridiculous amount of money if they do it. It doesn't sit well with me, I've got to say. If you're a citizen of that country, then surely you should be allowed to travel into it. I get you have the issue of spreading COVID and the different variants that are now about, but there must be a way that you can do it. You COVID tested before you get on the flight, you're COVID tested when you get off the flight. And I'm sure these people, they've got no issue with being put into quarantine for 14 days if it means they can get back into their country. So, it is extremely harsh measures if you're not letting your own people back into their own country.
Yeah, no, I agree. But you know what? We could go on about that because even in the, I keep my eye on the maritime industry as a whole. And you see, some of these crew that have been on tankers for ever, and they're not, being repatriated. And this is even before COVID. So I don't know, seafarers as a whole, they don't seem to be looked after as well. And, if you're seeing governments just saying straight across the board, anybody, and then on top of that, to be a seafarer, it's not good. I think countries have to really take a second look and reevaluate their sort of position or stance on that, I think.
I think so. I think you're right there as well, isn't it? People seem to forget that these guys are essential workers as well. A lot of the seafarers, you've got the supply chain of what you're going to get from your supermarket or your fuel and all the rest of it. And that just sort of, I don't know if it's out of sight, out of mind, because they're not in the country, and the newspapers or the media are not portraying these people as heroes like they do. And don't get me wrong, this isn't against healthcare workers, because they deserve every praise that they get. But it's almost like they're, the seafarers are the forgotten essential workers of this pandemic. And like you say, it's tough for those guys. You're living on the sea, and some of these guys have been out there for over a year, and that's got to be tough on your mental health.
Well, how else are we going to get our vaccines? How else are we going to get our masks? How else are we going to get our hand sanitizer? Yeah, people forget that. Why do we have milk on the shelves in countries that have no cows? These things are important. We have to think about that. And they are essential because, I'm pretty sure that without those cans on the shelf or some of those fruits and vegetables that come from other countries in every country, we wouldn't have that stuff if it weren't for these people. But the world in general doesn't even give them a thought.
Exactly right. It is that old adage, isn't it? Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. Well, Lee, once again, it's been highly informative, and I really appreciate your time. And I know the viewers really appreciate getting all this information every single week. So thank you again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I know. You have been watching another edition of Crew Travel right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.